In this video, I'll be showing you how to make a journal cover with stitches that are hidden in the spine, and also how to assemble and attach bulky journal pages that are made using stitched mixed media and found objects. This memory journal was made using the pages from my Taking Flight printable journal kit. The pages were printed onto cardstock. Then I added stitched mixed media and found objects, so each of the pages are quite bulky. I wanted to assemble the pages into a journal where the stitched spine was hidden and in such a way that the pages weren't squashed up. The easiest way to do this was to attach the pages back to back and use 4 pages per signature. Then each signature could be stitched into the spine, leaving plenty of room in between. I wrote the number of each page on a scrap of paper and attached it with a paper clip so the pages were in sequence. Then I aligned the pages back to back and machine stitched close around the outer edges. To join the pages and make a signature, I first aligned the facing pages and attached a small piece of masking tape at the top, bottom and centre to hold the pages in position. I left a small gap in between the page sets so they would fold over easily. For each signature, I tore 2 strips of fabric about 1.25 inches wide by about 1/2 inch longer than the page length. I folded a crease down the centre of each of the fabric strips to make it easy to line them up with the centre of the pages. Using a glue stick, I applied some glue down the centre of the pages to hold the fabric strips in position while I sewed them on. I then positioned 1 fabric strip on each side of the page set. I machine stitched each of the page sets together along the strips of fabric and ended up with 8 signatures, which is a total of 32 pages. To make the cover, I first stacked the signatures together and measured the width, which was 2.5 inches. I then cut the cover pieces out of chipboard, which is thick and rigid, but also can be easily sewn. I cut the front and back cover a 1/2 inch longer and wider than the pages, and I cut the spine at 2.5 inches wide by 1/2 inch longer than the pages. The finished size of the cover is 7.5 inches by 5.5 inches by approximately 2.5 inches deep. To make this type of book cover when using chipboard, you need to be sure to leave a gap between each of the pieces to allow the cover to fold easily. So I laid out the cover pieces and used some masking tape to hold the pieces in position. The width of the gap between the sections should be about the thickness of the chipboard. You can cut a small section of chipboard to use as a gauge. Use masking tape on both sides to make sure everything is held in place securely. Then, using a bone folder or paper creasing tool, or even the edge of a pair of scissors, press the masking tape into the gaps. To cover the chipboard, you could use some sort of decorative paper or scrapbooking paper. However, I'm using some of my hand-dyed fabric. I cut the fabric about 1 inch wider and longer than the cover, and instead of using fabric glue or tacky glue to attach it, I'm using fusible webbing. Fusible webbing is less messy to use when working with fabric because it won't seep through like glue does, and you can more accurately position things. Fusible webbing works in the same way that glue does. To use it, you iron it to one side of the fabric, then iron the fusible side of the fabric to the other surface. You can use it to bond fabric to other fabric pieces, and you can also use it with chipboard, as I'm doing. Once fused, it bonds permanently. When using fusible webbing, use a Teflon craft sheet or a piece of parchment paper to protect the surface of your ironing board or countertop. Once the fabric is ironed in place, carefully fold over the edges and iron them to the inside of the cover. You could miter the corners by cutting away the excess fabric. However, I just folded them at an angle and pressed them with the iron. To finish the cover, I printed out the cover pages from the journal kit onto cardstock, then added some additional fabric and lace embellishment. Then, using a sewing machine, I sewed those pieces to the front, back and spine. Chipboard is easy to sew through. The inside cover took some figuring out because I wanted the stitches where the signatures attach to be hidden inside the spine. For the front and back, I cut 2 pieces of cardboard from an old pizza carton, ironed the fabric to one side of the cardboard using fusible webbing, in the same way as for the outside of the cover, and then I sewed it all the way around the edges. I cut the front and back pieces about 1/4 inch shorter in height and several inches shorter in width, and I cut the spine section the width of the spine, which is 2.5 inches, plus an extra 2 inches on both sides. Once the spine is glued into position, the extra wings on the spine will be glued in place underneath the inside cover sections. I made the spine section using Craft Fuse Stabilizer, which is strong and flexible. And to make sure things didn't fall apart, I ironed 2 pieces together for extra stability. To make the spine section, I ironed a piece of fabric to one side of the Craft Fuse using fusible webbing and folded it over the top and bottom ends to hide the edges. On the other side, I marked where the 8 signatures would be sewn by drawing a set of vertical lines centered on the fabric and spaced 1/4 inch apart. I marked 1 line per signature. Then I marked 5 holes along each line with equal spacing in between for the stitching holes. I made a hole template from a piece of cardstock. I marked the hole positions for the signatures, poked a hole through each mark, then made a fold down the center. To use the template, simply position it over the center fold of the signature and using a felt tip marker, mark the position for the holes. To sew the signatures, use strong embroidery thread or bookbinding thread and a tapestry or embroidery needle. Before attaching the signatures, to make it easy to sew, I first put holes in the spine section using my needle. Now I'm ready to sew my first signature. Starting at the top on the underside, bring the needle through to the inside, leaving a thread tail of approximately 3 to 4 inches. Then bring the needle back out to the outside and back again to the inside. Continue sewing to the end, then all the way back again. Once you've sewn back to the top, tie the thread off in a knot on the underside. Continue adding the additional signatures in exactly the same way. Once all the signatures are sewn, use fabric glue or tacky glue to glue the spine section to the cover. Apply the glue along the spine and over each of the side pieces. I used a small piece of cardboard to spread the glue. Once the glue has been applied, position the spine section on the inside of the cover and press in place. used a creasing tool to push the fabric into the space on the cover between the spine and the cover sections. This will allow the cover to open and close a little easier without stretching the inside spine section too much. Once the spine section was in place, I attached some binder clips to hold everything together while it dried. I also ran my finger in between each of the signatures and pressed the fabric in place to ensure good adhesion. I left it to dry overnight because I wanted to make sure that the glue was properly set, and it was, so I was really pleased with the way that the spine worked out, using interfacing instead of cardboard. It's really held in place well, and it's flexible, so the book opens and closes very easily. With the spine in place, I then glued the inside back and front cover sections in the same way. happy with the way this journal turned out. The stitches are perfectly hidden inside the spine section, and the page assembly works perfectly for journals with thick collaged pages.